Hello, Brigitte here from Co-Creative Kizomba and Free to Move Dance School. So I wasn't going to do any videos this summer, but I've been getting a lot of people asking me or talking to me about a certain subject in the last couple of weeks, so I thought that I would do a little video about it for you guys. So the question is about technique in dance versus feeling. So sometimes people come to my classes and they think that I'm a very technical dancer, which I do teach a lot of technique in my classes, but when people see me dance socially, then they completely change their mind about the way that I dance because I'm a very big feeler, when I social dance. So to me, when you're social dancing, you shouldn't be thinking. At first when you don't have any skills, it's maybe a little hard to not think at all because you don't have it in your body yet. But once you have the steps in your body, then I really recommend that you spend at least 90% of the time at the socials just feeling, feeling the music. So for the leads, it's a lot about feeling the music and just relying on expressing the music with the movements that you're comfortable with. And for the follows, it's about listening to your partner and relying on, feeling what he's leading and just going with it. So I like to say that you are who you are today. You know, if you keep practicing, you're going to be a different dancer in 5 days, in a year, in 20 years. But today, when you go to a social, you bring yourself with you and you just accept that that's where you're at and you have fun with that. So don't try to, do things that you can't do, and that's okay. You can have fun with just the basics. And then if you go with that attitude that you're just going to be you with where you're at today, then you can have fun and you can feel and you can express yourself with what you know. But when you come into one of my classes, my goal is to make you a better dancer. So yes, learning how to feel is part of it, but also learning technique is a big part of it. To me, the way that I teach is that I try to get you to understand why you're learning what you're learning. So what the purpose is. For example, we can equate that to learning a language. So if I make you learn the alphabet, it gets a little boring. But if you don't know that it's to learn how to write, then it's even more boring, and why would you want to do it, right? So if you know the context of what you're learning, it helps a lot to get motivated to actually learn it. So I like to have an understanding piece as much as possible, and then repetition and structure and technique. So if you want to dance salsa, you need to learn the salsa steps. If you put salsa music on, you're not automatically going to do all the right steps. So there's definitely a time period in there that we want to be learning the technique behind it and put the structure up. So, or I call it foundation. So it's like building your foundation so that then you can build a house on top. So the foundation, it doesn't look very interesting, but without the foundation, the house would just fall apart because it wouldn't have anything to rely on. So dancing is a lot like that, or like language is a lot like learning the alphabet and verbs and nouns and how everything fits together. It definitely gets more fun when you can actually write and read and do all those things, because then you can actually use what you've learned. So to me, it's kind of like that when you're, like even when you're learning how to write, like you can make simple phrases and you can kind of put things together and kind of have a conversation, but it is nice when you know more. So that's what I mean, where don't not try to dance or not try to talk to someone because you don't know everything yet, because there's always more to learn. But yeah, so basically when I'm in class, although like once you're past the foundation, I do talk about musicality and feeling and all those things, I still teach quite a bit of technique because that's a big part in becoming a better dancer. And then also once you have the structure or the repetition, then the next step for me is to learn to play with it and to style it and to make it your own. And that you can do with your basic steps pretty much right away, right? So that's what I mean, where once you have your foundation steps, you can play and learn to play and be musical and all of that with your foundation steps. You don't need to wait to learn like a lot of stuff before you do that. So it's just different types of training. But anyway, all to say that it is not, don't go to a social event or a dance or whatever you want to call them and expect to be learning or to be in the same mindset as you are when you're in class. Or don't do the same thing, come to class with a mindset of being at a social. They're very different things. So for me, there's like class setting, there's also home practice by yourself or with a friend or whatever, and then there's actually social dancing. So those are three different things, and they require slightly different ways of looking at it. So class for me, you have to be open-minded, you have to try something new, because I think about it this way as a teacher, that like you're coming in with a certain comfort zone, which if you've never danced before is very tiny. So my goal is to grow your comfort zone, and the only way to do that is to always make you uncomfortable. And of course we're working on the pieces in the comfort zone, to get them better, but I'm always teaching you something new because we're trying to grow your comfort zone. And why things in your comfort zone are so important is because when you're comfortable with them, you can have fun with them on the social dance floor. You don't have to think about the technique of them when you're dancing socially, and you can just have fun. And then you can learn to style the moves, you can learn to be musical and creative with them, and to put them in different ways together, in your own ways, like I always think about, like when I'm teaching, I'm really teaching you a template, and I try to make you realize how like that, not that like what I teach you has to be done exactly the same way each time, but that it works together this way because of this, so that you can find how things can fit together in different ways, and you can kind of find your own ways to put your turns or moves together. Of course, you have to be patient with all those things. But that's kind of my 2 cents on that. So I do have a couple of recommendations when you're going out socially. So really focus socially on developing your social skills. So every dancer is going to be different. So you're going to have to feel each other out, kind of find a middle ground so you guys can dance together. And then you also want to focus on feeling and following or leading, as good as you can, and feeling the music and creating a groove and, expressing yourself, all those things. But what I also do, for me personally, is I do that about 90% of the time. And then if I'm working on something specifically that I want to improve and I want to be able to make it part of my comfort zone, and it's not quite there yet, I will try to think about those things as I'm social dancing, but only, when those things come up. So for example, if I want to, I don't know, clean up my woman saída in kizomba, for example, or my enchufla, we'll say. I want to fix something on my enchufla and salsa. There's just 2 examples. Every time that I remember when that move comes up, I'm going to kind of take my feeling brain off and I'm going to put my thinking brain on, and I'm just going to try to remember that so that it can kind of get more ingrained. But I only do that with maximum like 3 things, and I would say that at least, not to make that more than 10% of your time social dancing. So any song that you're social dancing to, 90% of the time I'm in the feeling zone. And the same thing with the leads. Like if you're, it's both ways, it can be styling, it can be like something that you haven't quite mastered as a lead. So every time that you're going to try this move, so I don't know, the casamento in kizomba, you're going to kind of go back and think a little bit how it works, so the technique of it, so that you can get through it. But the rest of the time you're going to do things that you're comfortable with, that you can play and have fun. Because really the goal, for me at least, in my opinion, to go social dancing is to have fun. And if you're always thinking and analyzing and trying to figure things out, then you're losing a lot of the joy in it. So if you really try to focus on just enjoying using the things that then it's a lot more fun. And your partner also feels that if you're like with them in the energy and the feeling and all of that, or if you're in your head trying to think about the technique behind it and the beats and all of those things, right? But again, when you're in class, then we are going most of the time into thinking. zone, because we're trying to learn something new, we're trying to understand new steps. So we can't be trying to feel all the time. So, and the same thing when you're practicing, you're going to want to try a lot of the time to focus on, working on the technique and breaking it down, and, all of that, making sure you have, the right practicing the right way and all of that, so that you get comfortable with the movements. But again, all of that work that you're doing, practicing and taking classes and workshops and, master classes, whatever it is that you're doing, is all great. But the whole point of all of that, at least to me, is to then be able to go at a social, forget, about all of that, trust that it is in your body and your mind and spirit, and just dance the way whatever comes out and just have fun, And that to me is, the whole thing. Like, if you never learn to let go of all that technique and the thinking, then you're executing steps, from a place in your mind. You're not really truly feeling and dancing and expressing. So I see so many dancers that stay for years. They know a lot of things, but they never learn how to, just let go and dance. So anyway, that is kind of some of the conversations I've had this week, either people that have learned from teachers that were more promoting feeling, and they came to my class and suddenly light bulbs came on. It's like, oh, that's how the technique of this is, and then this helps so much if I do this, or students that are taking classes with me but didn't really realize that, oh, socially I shouldn't be thinking. So, we've had a conversation around those topics from different point angles. So I thought it would be really nice to talk about that, because not everyone, understands that about social dancing. Anyway, thank you. Hope you guys are having a great summer and have fun social dancing. Summer is a great time to go out and dance. We do events outside on the waterfront in the summer. It's lots of fun. So just relax and dance and don't worry about it, nothing. And that's the other thing. It's like in class we're trying to get our technique really good, clean everything up. But you can still dance without perfect technique. You can still, you can still have fun, and it can still work if your technique is, okay, but not amazing. So don't worry too much about those things, and just let it go and let it happen. Anyway, thank you. This time it's really over. You guys have a good night, and we'll see you in the next one.